Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Jelani Hashim Bracy of your favorite nonprofit, CEO of your favorite nonprofit, Black to Life, here with another B2L Kickback series, y'all. This is where we have conversations to enrich and inform the African American community. We have some special guests on tonight, and without further ado, I'll get our first guest on. She's a busy woman and she'll have some about tonight, so we're gonna get her on. So while we wait, oh, there we go. Hey, Judge Martin, how you
Hello.
doing? Judge Lane, how are
I'm
you doing?
good. I'm
Hey,
good.
all right. Well,
This
we
is
just got
cool.
on.
I haven't done this before, so
Oh
I didn't know
yeah.
what to do.
Oh well. Hey, glad that you got to learn on our time. Yeah, yeah. We appreciate that. So just told everybody who I was and what this conversation was about enriching and informing the Black community. So if you wanted to go ahead and just introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, and we'll go from there.
I, all right. I'm Judge Andrea Martin Lane. I am the judge of the 304th District Court. It's a juvenile court here in Dallas County. So I hear a variety of cases. We only have two district courts for juvenile cases in Dallas County, mine and the other one. And so we handle all criminal cases for kids from 10 to 16. And we also hear child protective services cases. So I hear pretty much every high profile case when it deals with children who've been abused or neglected. It's amazing and horrifying what people will do to their kids. It's terrible what people do to their kids and people children are supposed to be able to trust to care for them. And then I also deal with the kids who get in trouble. And unfortunately, a majority of them look like us, look like my son, look like our children. And a lot of that is systematic. I will say that. And I'm glad I'm in the position to where I can root those things out. But then there's some like the case that's been on the news today. I actually heard that case with the kid, 16-year-old boy who is accused of killing the lady on Memorial Day. So, I hear cases where we have a lot of kids under between, 10 and 16 who commit murders and are charged with capital murder. And usually what happens is the state will ask us, one of the district judges, to determine whether that child should be sent to the adult court for prosecution as an adult. So I hear some of the most serious cases, but I think the most important case is because it deals with our kids and what I do affects our communities in the future.
Yes, I truly do. And like you spoke to the case today. So what made you interested in that field, in that line of work? Like, what motivated you or pushed you along that path to want to make a change? Because as you mentioned, you've been in this system for how many years? Did you say in the judicial system, law system altogether?
Oh, it's been over 20 years that I've actually been practicing law and with a focus on juvenile cases. But to answer your question, I have always had an interest in giving back to our kids because but for people surrounding themselves and doing the same for me, I wouldn't be where I am now. There's nothing special about me. I grew up in some of the same areas that some of the kids I see grew up. I had hardships and pain. And so I understand that. So from the time I was going to college and law school, I had people who were supporting me to make sure I stayed on the right track and was able to be successful. And in return, it says to whom much is given, much is required. And if it's not me, then who else is going to do it? So I felt it was always important for me to go back into the community and give back, and especially communities of color, because a lot of times, especially when I was in law school and volunteering my time, going into schools, going into communities and mentoring, most times kids only saw lawyers and judges because their family members were part of that criminal system. And they were shocked a lot of times to see me. I mean, starting out 20 years ago, there were a lot of Black attorneys, but not as many now as now. So it'd be rare for them to see someone who looked like me coming to talk to them. So I realized the importance and the impact I was having, because it opened their eyes to that there was an opportunity for them to do something other than what they were seeing every day. And that just continued. My volunteering with kids just continued. I was an assistant district attorney in Dallas County, actually in the other juvenile court. I was a baby prosecutor down the hall from where I'm the judge now. And when I was there, I really became disturbed seeing the numbers of minorities in both sides of the courts, whether it was child protective services cases, because unfortunately, a lot of the families were families of color who lived in certain apartment complexes. And what I would see is caseworkers going from apartment complex, apartment in the same complex, investigating these families. And a lot of things were cultural. I mean, I had a case where CPS thought that a child was being abused because they didn't understand that calling a child butt wasn't something sexual. We have nicknames for our kids. Yeah. A lot of, in our communities, we use corporal punishment, physical discipline, which the law in Texas says you can, but CPS have an absolute zero policy. So a lot of children were removed because of that. And so it got to a point where after hearing all these cases and being part of that system, it started to really weigh heavy on me. And I decided to leave my position as assistant district attorney and start my practice representing children and families in criminal cases as well as in CPS cases. So I went from a prosecutor or as a persecutor, as you know, I would looked at it at that time, to someone who was trying to make a difference. I became the defender. And as I continued doing that, I was married, had a son. My son, as he became older, I became concerned about other little boys like him who were still going into this system. I was doing what I could as an attorney, but I realized that if I had a bigger platform with being a judge I could actually make a bigger difference. So I decided to run for judge, and he was my biggest influence, because when I ran, he was about to be 10 years old. And a lot of people don't know that in Texas at 10, a child could be taken from their family and locked up in detention. And can you imagine, as an adult, that would freak me out, but imagine a child, how that starts them on this path of feeling like they should be institutionalized. Imagine what happens to their soul and their spirit, and that crushing that starts and becomes a ripple effect. So my goal and my platform was, I was going to keep our children out of cages and in the community. And I did that from the time I was elected. I started a diversion court that works with kids of that tender age, from 10 to 13. We take kids who have misdemeanors and felonies. We put them through a program. And I've had over 100 graduates. And out of all the juvenile diversion courts, my court is the #1 court. We have 0% recidivism, which means kids go through my program and they don't come back. So this platform has given me an opportunity to make a bigger difference. And so I'm very happy that I've had the opportunity to do it. And I'm almost up for re-election. Starting next year, I'll be on the campaign trail. The re-election is in 2022. So I'm asking everyone to remember me in 2022.
I hear you. So to that, and I appreciate everything that you've done and that you do for the community, and that passion that you had that pushed you to that. So my question is, in your experience in the law and the justice system, you spoke to a systematic way that our kids have been ushered into that system. Could you speak to that systematic way? Like, what does that actually look like, us being ushered into the system that way?
Well, I mean, think about it. America was founded upon racism, a legacy of slavery, and we are still dealing with that. And the problem is, a lot of people don't really want to speak on how that legacy is affecting us. It's affecting us in institutions, the governmental institutions, access to opportunities, access to employment, to education, all these things, equal opportunity. When you are denied those things, if you cannot feed your family because you cannot get a job, then to feed your family, you're going to most likely commit a crime. So That's how it affects us. Our education systems, usually for inner city neighborhoods where a lot of Black people live, because of poor, because of this generation of poor. I mean, think about it. A lot of people said that we made it with the civil rights movement. But after civil rights movement, we had Jim Crow. I mean, we had all these things, and then we had affirmative action. So affirmative action was in 1970s. So technically, we've been equal for 30 years. But really, Jim Crow went from Jim Crow. A lot of like people say that it's not Jim Crow now, it's Jim Crow Esquire. He's become more sophisticated. So those systems are still there. The slave catchers, which were the police officers, back in the police officers, we still have those same systems where our children are looked at. My son, who I love, who is a gentle giant, just like this man who was killed, because of his Black skin, his brown skin, it's a weapon. He's viewed different. It's because of these systems that have been put in place from the media, who has us viewed as animals and more likely to commit crimes, more likely to commit violence. So we have all these systems that are in place that affect us negatively. And it's unfair. And when I go talk to kids, I talk to them true. Yes, we have these systems. Yes, it's unfair. We have to recognize it, but that doesn't mean that we lay down and just let what happens happen. We still have to fight through it. We have to be better than everyone else. I can't do anything halfway. I have to be better. So those are the type of systems. Back from that legacy of slavery, we still have to deal with it in government, education, employment, healthcare. All these things affect us as people of color.
Yes. And what some people don't realize, I think the rest of America doesn't realize, that we all have those kitchen table topics that we all, have concern with healthcare, education, job growth, all that. But with us we have to always add race into every one of those kitchen table topics, because our race affects how we have access to those systems and how we progress within those systems. So that's one thing, like, people try to me, that's what people try to put to the side, like race is just over here. No, race is entwined into everything, because as you said, America was built on race, on like the devaluing of a human being. So with that being said, to your point, the systematic flow of how everything has been falling has just actually just seems like it falls on us all the time. But to your point, even though we know those traps are there, we know that system is there, we as a people have to still do what we have to do and rise above. And like yourself, get into these careers that change. Like,
yes.
You got into a lot and you saw, hey, I could affect it more as a judge. And that may not be everybody's path, but you can always do something that you see is lacking in your community. So I appreciate that that info as well. So before we let you get out of here, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
We've been talking around it. We're just gonna hit it right now. What do you define, or how do you see being Black? Like, what is being Black, being African? What does that mean to you? What does that look like to you?
Well, being Black, it's a cultural thing. It's the essence. It's the spirit. It's so many things about being Black. It makes us wonderful people. And of course, we have to protect that, and we have to nurture that feeling of king and queen in our kids, because the images, I will say, I have always been very protective of what I allow my son to see. I didn't let him watch a lot of things. I don't let him listen to a lot of music. I will say that my mother and women and around me did the same thing. I had images of Blackness around me. We are the inventors of astronomy, of all of these things. So Blackness is the ultimate beauty to me. And because of the systems that we're in, and we're in a country who devalues us and teaches us to devalue ourselves. That's the biggest trick, teaching us to devalue ourselves, that we have to be careful about what we put into our spirit, because we have so much strength in our systems from our ancestors. And so that's what Blackness is to me. It's a culture, it's the essence, it's the spirit, it's everything from the motherland.
Cool, man. Hey, that's a drop the mic moment right there if I ever seen one. For real. Thank you, Judge Martin. I know you have Judge Lane. I apologize. You know, I'm just used to that. Please forgive me. But
no problem.
Congratulations on your judgeship and on your and good luck to your run. Next year we'll be on the lookout for you, and we'd love to have you back anytime to discuss.
Let me know. You
yes,
know,
ma'am.
when you call, I'm going to come. You're my fraternity brother. We've been there. You were so helpful. I enjoy partnering with B2L. I love it.
All right. I appreciate that. And Black to Life really appreciate you. So I'm going to let you get up out of here. Thank you again, Judge Lane, and we'll see you around.
Have a good evening.
All right, you too. All right, y'all. That was Judge Andrea Lane, 304th District Court Judge in Dallas. Thank y'all for joining us. I kind of started a little late, but that was, like I said, Judge Andrea Lane. She's a District 304 Court Judge with the Juvenile Court, and she helps our children, our kids that usually find the judicial system and the law system very early in their educational careers or pathways. And she chose to be a beacon of light to those kids and try to help that curve that systematic pipeline that seems to be of our kids through the school system to the prison. So we appreciate her help. Our next guest is coming up. Just asked to be joined. And it says connecting, y'all. That's why I'm waiting. So forgive my apologies. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We coming on.
Are we on?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you. Can you see me?
Okay. I can see you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what this is. This has happened before, but we can go with it if you don't mind. Cause I asked for you to come on. Let me see. Let me try this right quick. The same thing on your end about waiting or joining?
No, do you want me to close out and try to come back in?
Yeah, try that one more time.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, people, that was our second guest. This is Ms. Jamie LeShae Jenkins of Miss J's classroom. And she'll be joining us next. Here we go. All right. Sorry for the inconvenience, y'all, but here we go. I'll try that one more time. You on?
Yeah, what the deal is.
Yeah. Me neither. But we can go with it though. If you good with it, I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
it's like my picture is frozen. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. You want to try from your other account?
From the personal account?
Yeah. Or we can just try this. Like I said, we can go with it.
It's whatever you want to do. It's your show.
All right. Let's try that one more time. Let's try your personal account, and then after that, we're just gonna go with it.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. All right, people, we're gonna try one more time, man. And please forgive us for the technical difficulties. It may be IG, I don't know, maybe mine, maybe hers, but we're gonna get this together. We're gonna get this together, y'all. So appreciate everybody, like I said, coming out and joining these conversations. And what we try to do is have these conversations to change and inform and educate our community, the Black community, because I know with a lot that's going on out there today, like you see another perspective. So we want to give you our perspective of different Black professionals that are around the nation. And we want to just give you their intake on what it is to be Black and just how, you know, they deal with living day to day with that. With
Yeah, I
you
guess
know.
it's just not gonna do it.
Yeah, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Well, we just gonna roll like this. I don't know what's going on. We
I
can
don't
roll
hear
like
you.
this. All right.
Okay.
So I haven't gave too much information about it. So if you want to, you can go ahead and introduce yourself to the people that's listening.
Okay. I am LeShae. I am an educator. I've been an activist since I was a teenager. And I'm an artist.
Okay, cool. And where are you? Are out of the what area? Dallas area? Are you from Dallas?
Born and raised.
Born and raised
Born
in
and
Dallas.
raised.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Dallas girl.
All right. So tell a little bit more about, you know, what you do as an educator and artist, and like what and a community activist. Like, tell us a little bit more about that. What does that entail? Can you hear me? Is she gone? Instagram tripping tonight. Hey, did I lose you?
I don't know what is going on.
Hey, it's okay. We gonna roll with it. It is all right. So my
Okay.
question that I asked you, I was asking if you could expound on what you do as an educator and an artist, and as an activist. Like what does that actually entail?
Sure. So it's a little bit of a long story, but what I'll sum it up into is I focus on decolonization education. The journey started off as me being a high school history teacher. I worked primarily with Black and brown children, and then from there I went into coaching teachers. And from there I saw like a gap. I then went on to become a consultant, and I focused on diversity, equity, and
Oh man, that was getting good. I don't know what's going on. Let me see what other one
I'm grabbing another phone. I
is.
have
Are
another
you?
phone. Yep. And I'm going to see because I'm like, what in the world is going on here?
It's all right.
I'm like, somebody don't want me to speak.
It's all right. We gonna get it going though. We're gonna get it cracking.
But yeah, I was saying that I went from teaching to teaching teachers. And after teaching teachers, I became a consultant. And I focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social justice education. The whole point of that was to make sure that children in our schools were receiving the supports that they needed. And the problem was we have a lot of deficit-based focus in our schools on Black and brown children. So our schooling system treats children as if they're the problem. Like kids can't read.
Yes, you gotta get that. Yeah, Jay, you gonna have to get that other phone, but I'm gonna wait on you. So that was Jay LeShae talking about her as an educator and how she focuses on the education of Black and brown children, and how the education system is more focused on deficit. Uh, Hold on, is she coming on? Yeah,
Okay,
there you
let's
go.
try this. Let's see.
I can see you. I see you,
Oh
and
my
I can hear you.
Okay,
I,
so this is the iPhone. This might mean that Android is about to go.
yeah.
But I'm
As you
back.
said, yeah, you were saying with deficit learning. Is that what you said? You were saying that?
Yes. So I got into coaching teachers and focusing on consulting because the schooling system is set up with a lot of negative statistics around our kids. And most of us just that get the propaganda, we believe that. Like kids, there's this achievement gap, blah, blah, blah. What I saw when I was coaching teachers was in fact the opposite. What I was seeing is that we have really, really gifted kids who come from different cultures, and you have teachers who don't understand the culture, and you have data
data sets that support the idea that kids are the problem and not that we have a systemic problem. Our curriculum doesn't support kids. Our development for teachers doesn't really support kids. And so when you have kids who have different geniuses and different types of gifts, and you have teachers who only know how to teach one way, it's not the teacher's fault. It's just that they don't know how to meet different gifts. So that, in combination with deficit-based information, you have a lot of programming in our schooling system and nonprofit world that focuses on how do we fix the kid. So I started doing work around like, how do we actually understand the problem is systemic and is school-based? When I got into social justice education and starting to think about like, how do we connect to freedom, community, et cetera, I saw another deficit-based gap. And this was actually around us, the adults. We have a hard time honoring ourselves, honoring our own genius, honoring our own freedom. I definitely see it amongst all of us, but I really saw something happening with people of color. And I decided from that point on, I was like, I actually need to evolve my focus. There are a lot of people focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion. There's a lot of people talking about social justice. Who's talking about decolonization? Who's talking about the fact that our experience in this land has injured our psyche and spirit so much that we don't even recognize that we're doing it. And so I decided, like, I'm gonna go into this lane. So that's the work I do now.
Okay. So when you speak of decolonization, what do you mean exactly by decolonization?
Well, I think the best way to break that down is to actually start with colonization and talk about what that is. And so I think most of us know, but I'll just say it in case we don't. Colonization is the process where a nation sends off people to different nations to take over them, create new controls, and take resources from those lands. The way that happened here is with European colonizers. They went around the world. They set down flags. They said, this is mine and we own it now. So we're going to take the resources and we're going to create a hierarchy of people and of theory and of science. And so now we live in that hierarchy. And since we've lived in it for generations, what has happened to us is we believe that whatever is promoted through these systems is the absolute truth and it's the right kind of truth. So it leaves us in a place where if we have different or alternative ways of seeing and believing, we say, well, something's wrong with that person. They crazy. Or if you have a different science practice, for example, there's one right science. If it doesn't come out of the American college system or a European scientist, then it's not science. It's not possible that, for example, with COVID, there is a man in Madagascar who has an organic solution and their country is using it and sending it to other countries and they're saying it's working. But if you look at the news from the Western world about it, it's like it's quackery. It's like, so there's a bias automatically. And most of us who grew up in this system go with that bias because of colonization. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like colonization infects us in a way that we create a hierarchy, not just in the skin tone of people or in the male-female system. It's also in bodies of knowledge. It's also in religion. It's also, so we have an idea that there's something better or right or the one right way over everything else. And so I focus on how do we uproot that and analyze how that happened to us so that especially people of color can reconnect to and honor the genius that we already came with that is a part of our culture that a lot of times we demonize and look down upon as problems.
Yeah, and I think that's very important that you have taken on that task of decolonization because, as you say, to be colonized sets up that hierarchy, and that hierarchy has us at the bottom. So
right.
it's very important that, first of all, we know that, and that way we can deconstruct in our mind because, to me, like what you just said, everything, if you're basing yourself on a colonized mind and everything you choose or base your selection on is going to be from that mind. So you're thus going to put yourself down in that hierarchy because, like you said, the hierarchy has already been placed, and you just sit in and just fell in line with it. So I
Right.
think that is very important, and I appreciate what you do. Is there something that was there a moment or a time in your life that just sparked you like, you know what, I got to do this? Like what pushed you forward to make you even want to be like, because you got to care. First of all, to even be a teacher, first of all, you got to like want to do that. But then you want to go actually into another realm of it and be like, you know what, I got to go beyond these textbooks. I got to go beyond what the system has our kids to try to pass these tests, but I need to get them on another level. So what's, snapping your mind like, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I think there's a combination of my personal journey along with being around a lot of just gifted and genius people that I love who don't fit into a box of genius by way of our schooling system. So if I were to back it up, I would say, number one, I was raised by a 16-year-old girl who became a woman. And this woman, by standard of the world at the time, was a statistic, right? Like, you have a young girl, she's a problem. You know, the narratives that are told. And so there isn't a narrative told around her genius. And then me being a girl growing up in the hood, I'm a statistic. So I'm an anomaly at that because I'm a kid. So there's these stories that are told about the kind of genius you can have. And one of my first experiences in recognizing that genius is one type of genius was in the 6th grade when I had a teacher named Miss Calico who gave me a test that was basically our standardized state test, but she switched it into the slang of the neighborhood, the Pleasant Grove. And I failed the test. I've gotten straight A's my whole life, and then this is the first test I failed. I can't pass a test about slang, like using the slang words from my neighborhood. And so, but everybody around me could. So all these kids who couldn't pass the test that I could pass, they could pass that one. And so that was an aha moment for me when I was 12 years old. So that's when it first started. And then when I get up into college at Clark Atlanta, I started learning all of this stuff about our history, and I was activated. And I felt that activation. I started thinking like, well, if I was activated like this, what would have happened if I would have learned this history when I was a kid? And then when I started traveling, that's what really did it. Because going to Oaxaca, going to Dubai, going to Tanzania, going to Ethiopia, going to Burkina Faso, like touching the land, seeing all of these different places and understanding how culture is different, it helped me to really understand more parts of myself that were demonized in this land, and other parts of genius that we just kind of write off. So, for example, one of the things I've just really been beating the drum on is the relationship between the indigenous spiritual practices of First Nation people and African people that people later called demonic worship and witchcraft. That actually, when I started looking at quantum physics and the principles of quantum physics, there's a lot of parallels. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. There is a possibility that our ancestors had a level of genius that was so high that it was misinterpreted. And here we are perpetuating a narrative that we were told about our people, that they are demons and witchcraft and all of this kind of stuff. And witchcraft, even the word, like there's a history to that too that we don't know. So as I started to pull all this history up, I was like, okay, we gotta pause and really analyze what's going on, because it's not just hurting our kids, it's hurting us as individuals. I think we are unique beings, and a lot of us have shut that down because society says something is weird about you and something's wrong with that. And so now we perpetuate it against each other because society did it to us.
Yes, and I think that's very important because, like you said, society has put that in our head that, like you said earlier, it's one way, it's this way, this is the best way, and neglecting the genius that was before that you demonized and said because it was different, and you want to uphold some kind of that word, that superiority that that you manufacture. It's saying you manufacture the superiority. So that's
exactly
false. That's false in right there in this equivalency. So once you do that, I mean that says a lot. So thank you for that. Before I let you go, I want to get you one question. We've been talking about it all night, but what is it to be? What does it mean to you to be black, to be of African descent? What does that mean and look like to you?
Well, I don't think of being black and being of African descent as synonymous. I'll start there. I think often blackness is used as an identity. I don't think of it as an identity. I think of it as an experience. We are dark-skinned people who came from many different places, many different tribes, ethnicities. Some of us are tribes from this land, First Nation from the Americas, dark-skinned people who came from here. Some of us come from tribes from the African land. And so because we had this shade of color, we were called black. Blackness is an experience. It is this experience in response to the terrorism of whiteness. Now, we made blackness cool with our ethnicity, our culture, our creativity, our divinity. But blackness is actually the attack of identity, is the subtraction of ethnicity, is the subtraction of freedom. It is the resilience of a people who come from many identities and geniuses, and we have resisted this oppression and suppression through it. So that's blackness. Blackness is the amalgamation of all of this stuff, and it's a reaction. You know what I mean? Like, we have to survive through. That is blackness. It's an experience to me.
Cool. I can definitely dig that. I've in my journey through life, and I've seen that black. Actually talking to a man from African. He was actually from Kenya, and he told me that he had never heard the word African American until he got to America. He said that was just another kind. He felt there was another kind of separation between us and the motherland. He was just like, we call it, we're black, and to me that's an experience because he's over and grew up in Africa, and I grew up in America, and they gonna bust out here. What Malcolm once said, it don't matter where you from, your religion, or whatever you do, your job, or whatever. All this country sees is your color, and that's the experience.
Right. That's the experience. Yeah. That reaction that you just talked about, that's exactly it. It is our defense in reaction to the psychosis of whiteness. That is blackness. But we just made it cool.
Yeah. And who can make it better cool than us? Nobody.
Only us.
Yeah. So look, I know we was pressed for time. I'm gonna have to get you back on here, and we're gonna have to get this technical thing together. But I really appreciate you, Jamie, LeShae of Miss J's Classroom. Thank you for all that you do as your educator, as an activist, and also as an artist. We really appreciate you for representing the culture, and thank you. And I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be hollering at you. All right.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. So that was Miss LeShae, Jamie LeShae Jenkins of Dallas, Texas, educator, artist, and activist. Really into changing the mind of our children and of us too, what she liked to call the decolonization of our mind. And I can definitely get with that. So our next guest is coming on shortly.
About a case that he just filed. So I'm jumping off so I can jump on here.
Oh, my bad.
So yeah, and I'll take over and wrap up from here. So I just want to thank everyone for their time.
Sorry, I'm constantly like double, triple booked. Hey.
Hey, what's going on, man?
What's going on?
Not much, man. How you doing?
It's a busy life, even though we're in the midst of COVID.
I see, man. I know. I just saw you were taking care of business a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so we were so every once in a while we do these Thursday Texas tea or Tito's events where we basically are dropping the tea on things that are going on, and we encourage people to kind of just bring their Tito's. It's supposed to be like a happy hour type situation.
Yeah.
And obviously with everything that's going on in Minnesota, it's really important for us to talk about those things, but I'm all about educating people and making sure people understand what their rights are, what the laws are, and that kind of stuff. So this particular talk was focused on what is it to be a civil rights lawyer and what does a civil rights lawyer do? because so many people have no idea what a civil rights lawyer does. So I did have.
Hold on, before you get into that, I want you to
Okay.
introduce yourself because they don't know who I'm talking to.
Oh, my bad.
You good?
My bad. So I am Jasmine Crockett, and I am a licensed attorney. I'm licensed in Texas, Arkansas, and federal courts. And I primarily handle criminal defense cases, civil rights cases, and I handle car accidents. I am also running for state representative here in the Dallas area. I would represent South Dallas, West Dallas, and East Dallas all the way over till you get to the very beginning of Mesquite. So that's me.
Cool. And so now you could go, we can continue to Texas T. My bad. So you were explaining what a civil rights lawyer was, and
yeah, no. So I was just, so our talk was about what is it that a civil rights lawyer does, because there are definitely, I think every time somebody sees Ben Crump on a case, they're confused and they're like, but he lost the Trayvon Martin case. You know, like that's what everybody talks about is like, he lost Trayvon Martin. And I try to let them know that, you know, a prosecutor is someone who is elected. That's what they do. The civil rights attorney goes after somebody for money. So we go for money, and prosecutors go for convictions. And so people get really confused. And so they're like, I don't know why people keep hiring him because he don't know how to get people locked up. And I'm like, let me just explain to y'all how this works. So it was a really good talk to educate people on their options as far as how do they report bad police officers. Excuse me. We had a current Black police officer for DPD on, kind of just talking about what it is to kind of be in his unique position, because when he takes that uniform off, he a Black man, like period, you know? So he lives in, you know, a couple of different worlds, but it was a great talk. But that's that. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. Yeah.
So yeah. So what got you into to law at all? Like into the to civil rights? Like what made you want to jump into this arena and, you know, follow in the footsteps of some of our great, you know, civil rights leaders and attorneys of the past, you know, because you're walking in some good footsteps, you know, some huge footsteps. So what made you want to take on that challenge and get into that?
So that's a very interesting question. You know, people don't ask that very often. So I never wanted to be a lawyer at all. I initially went to college and said I was going to be an anesthesiologist. So I was always going to be a doctor. So I was taking all kinds of math classes and all types of science classes. And then I got tired of biochem, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I switched over to business because I was good at math and science. And so I was like, well, I'll be a CPA. Well, probably about my junior year, I believe, in college, I went to school in Memphis, Tennessee, small white liberal arts school. Even though it was in the heart of Memphis, there weren't very many Black people in my class. And myself, along with probably about 8 or 10 other Black people, became the victims of hate crimes. We received like racist hate mail in our mailboxes on campus. One of my best friends, her car was keyed with the N-word. There were just a series of things that they were doing, like at different times, like targeting us. And that was probably the first time that I feel like I've always been Black, right? But when I really was like, oh, this is what it is to be Black, right? Where someone was coming after me only because I was Black. Like I never truly experienced that. And our school called in the Cochran firm, named after the late Johnny Cochran. It was his firm. And they called them in to kind of help with the investigation. And I remember being inspired by a Black female attorney that came in and sat, and she was assigned to me. And she actually went to University of Houston for law school. And it was just one of those times where I was like, I don't know what to do. And I felt very helpless. And she was there. And although, you know, no one ever figured out who did what, it really put me in a better position, knowing that there was somebody there that was there to help me. And I was like, I don't ever want anybody else to feel like I felt. And I want to be able to help people in that same way. And so ultimately, I graduated from the University of Houston Law School. So people truly don't understand the impacts that they can have on a person's life. And that was one of those things that kind of changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Okay, cool. So it wasn't like a deficit or a problem like you saw. You just was inspired by different people around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. So what do you, as a civil rights attorney, and as we've seen, you know, man, feel like it's been a couple months. It's just been like maybe a week where we've seen brother after sister, you know, just seem like they're indiscriminately shot down or just killed, or people threatening to call the police on people that look like me and you. Like, as a civil rights attorney in the law, I feel like, how do you feel what you do, or what do you feel you could offer to help, you know, our community in a situation like this, and just in general? Just what do you think your craft could bring to our progress?
So it's all about educating. You know, people say we got to go protest, we got to have a vigil, we've got to loot. Those things don't bring about the lasting changes, right? Like, they definitely don't bring anybody back, and they don't bring about like true change. So I'm trying to educate people on the fact that the laws are written in such a way that it makes it almost impossible for you to recover. You know, some people would say, if a black man is sitting at home eating a bowl of ice cream, not hurting anybody, not bothering anybody, and a white woman comes into his home and kills him dead, the average person would think, oh, absolutely, somebody about to pay. Do you think the city of Dallas has paid a dime? They've not. In fact, the city of Dallas was actually released from the litigation. That's what most people don't even realize. And that was the only place that you could get money, because the officer who now is sitting in jail, she ain't got nothing. She didn't have nothing before, and she definitely ain't got nothing now that she's sitting in jail. So how is that justice, right? But that's legislation for you. And so we're coming up on these elections, and everybody's paying attention to Biden and Trump, Biden and Trump, Biden and Trump. And I think the Biden and Trump conversation, it's a valid conversation, even as it pertains to civil rights. But how many people are talking about who's running for U.S. Congress, who's running to be their U.S. representative, or who's running to be their U.S. senator, to know, what do you stand for? Are you going to help us with the laws that will allow us to actually get recovery when somebody that works for the city of whomever takes one of our lives unjustly? Because right now, the way that the laws are set up, you lose before you walk in. We're not even talking about somebody that was a thug, because, you know, every time something happened, somebody want to be like, oh, well, let me tell you about their record, and they want to disparage their character. But we're talking about somebody that was, I mean, by all counts, like a saint on earth, right? We're talking about Botham Jean. And we're talking about the fact that his life is gone, and the city of Dallas is able to say, oh, well, you
All
get
because
that.
of how the legislation is written.
This is about how legislation is written on all levels. So I'm running on the state level, and I know the average person kind of is over politicians and doesn't really care for them and have whatever issues they have. But the races you really need to pay attention to are races like this. They fly under the radar, and that's why we continue to have to march over and over and over. I'm running for a position that pays $7,000 a year for me to go and be in another city for 6 months once every 2 years. So I got to go live in Austin. So you tell me how many normal, everyday people can say, hey, job, hold on, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to Austin. And by the way, while I'm in Austin, I'm only going to get $7,000. it's not set up so that the everyday voices are heard in Austin. There's a reason that they're not, you know, as loud about races like mine, because this is where the power exists. When I talk to other reps, they're like, you do realize the majority of reps are rich. I'm like, yeah, because who can go down there and stop everything, right? But in a movement, there has to be moving parts. There have to be people everywhere. And when we say that there's a system and the system this, the system that, you need to understand what makes up the system and figure out where do you fit in this system. And you need to make sure that you're paying attention to who is writing the laws and hold them accountable for what it is that they will do or what they won't do. And so, yeah, it's on all levels, but civil rights has to go beyond the hashtag and go beyond the looting and go beyond the marching. We've got to march to the polls. We've got to make sure that we're putting the right people up to run for office in general. And going back to the presidential debate, I can't say that I'm in love with either candidate. I did not vote for the Democratic nominee. I will be voting for him in November, but it's bigger than him. We right now have 2 Supreme Court justices that are nearing death. That's just the reality. One is almost 90 years old, and both of them are liberals. And so we're talking about changing the trajectory of our laws forever. And Trump has appointed more federal judges than any other president in modern day history. When we file our civil rights cases, we go to federal judges who quickly kick them out. So I recently just had one kicked out, and I'm like, I can't believe this got kicked. Like, he got fired, and this judge kicked it. I mean, it's bad, and people have to understand how deep it goes when we're dealing with civil rights cases, and it's beyond just the video and the hashtag on social media.
Yeah, and like you said, I think when I see, you know, the protests, and I feel the anger and the frustration, and it's from a feeling of powerlessness. Just like you said, like, we don't realize these laws that are written just in to desecrate us. Like, it's not made for us to do. So people like yourself realize that, and you know, but we don't pay attention to your race because, first of all, it's not sexy. You know, it's not going to be advertised like that. But it's how the steak is made.
Right.
And in this situation, we need to know how it's being made, because we just been eating what they've been giving us.
Yep.
And it's time to stop eating what's just been given to you and actually know how it's being made. And I think that's where we fall short as a people, and that's why I'm happy. That's why I wanted you on here, because I know that you know your passion and what you stand for, and that you want to make a difference, and you're trying. Like I said, you're going for what is it? HD? What does that stand for?
100.
What does HD stand for?
House District.
Oh, House District. Okay, so House District 100, and you said that's the South, West, East, all the way to where?
I go all the way. I get the very beginning of Mesquite. But I get like South Dallas proper. I get basically West Dallas is broken up into 3. So I get a third of West Dallas. I get all in South. So 75215, 75216, 75227. Like, I get all of that in Buckner Terrace. I get a small part of Pleasant Grove. My district is majority minority, so I can fight for these issues, and they will represent exactly what my district is feeling. It is 40% Black, 40% Hispanic, and 20% Caucasian. The Caucasian portion of my district, for the most part, comes from White Rock Lake. So White Rock Lake area, a portion of that is put in. But, you know, you think about it and you say, what does White Rock Lake have in common with South Dallas? Like, nothing. Like, I mean, but they get one representative, right?
Right.
So, you know, so you have to be able to understand what it is that your entire constituency needs. But I do appreciate that my district is majority minority. So when I'm talking about criminal justice reform, I can actually have that conversation. because it matters. I have 4 of the highest incarcerated zip codes in the state of Texas right there in my district. So criminal justice reform was needed like yesterday, right? And I'm someone that understands criminal justice in general because that's what I do as well. I do criminal defense. Doing civil rights every day is not where it's at. But I do criminal defense work, so I understand where the flaws are within the system. I understand the disparities when it comes to who we arrest and who we convict and how we convict. And I want to make sure that we are starting to come up with real reforms instead of just using it as a buzzword and saying criminal justice reform, because people run for office and they always say that, but they can't bring it from a conception into something tangible so that people say, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? I can tell you exactly what it looks like because I live within this world every single day. So, the hardest part is getting the word out and getting people to understand that, campaigns take money. And now I'm dealing with COVID, so it's like we're a hardworking team. My team, we knock doors. We get to the people. We let them know that we're not afraid to talk to them. We answer their questions because that's what it is. You're supposed to work for the people and be accountable to them, not the other way around. And somewhere along the way, we got lost to where politicians feel like they're kings and queens and they decide if they're going to talk to the peasants. You know what I mean? And I'm tired of that attitude. So it's been very frustrating that I can't get to the doors, but it is also the most refreshing thing that when I do some random event, like we gave away masks because we have Jasmine reusable cloth mask that we purchased, and we gave some away in my neighborhood, and to see so many people that were like, oh my goodness, it's good to see you, and they were so happy and they wanted their mask. And so we've got a few more mask giveaways coming up, and I'm really excited to get back to the people. I get to see a couple of my seniors over the last couple of days, and they're so funny because one today she gave me oranges and water. She's like, I got to make sure you get your vitamin C and you stay healthy. So those are the things that you just can't pay for, like these wonderful relationships with these beautiful older Black women that provide for me, protect me, pray for me, care for me. I am really excited to kind of just get to Austin and start to show the rest of Texas what representation is supposed to look like, because my plan is to set a new bar for what it is to have a rep and make people be like, well, wait a minute, why my rep not doing that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Well, that's cool. And I appreciate you representing the people that you're talking about and that you want to make a change for. Like, I appreciate you going out your way for those people, for our people, for us. So thank you for that. And before I let you get out of here, I want to ask you our final question. What is it to be Black? Like, what in your opinion, what does it mean to be Black?
Sadly enough, to wake up as a Black person, I'll get on Black woman in a second, but to wake up as a Black person means that because God decided to bless you with the beautiful melanin that protects us from having crazy wrinkles and keeps us looking young and vibrant, that at least in this country, our skin will be seen and deemed a weapon, and therefore will be a threat to anyone that doesn't have as much melanin as us. It also means that you will always be in a situation where you will be underestimated, you will be disregarded, and oftentimes people will push that you are forgotten. To take that one step further and say to wake up as a Black woman, it definitely means that you're going to be angry. And I can tell you that I am angry. I am. But if you lived in my world where you don't have children, but you fear that if you do have a child and you have a son, that someone may think that his life is not worth anything and take it away, or that if I am fortunate enough to be married one day to a wonderful Black man, that I will have to consistently worry about whether or not my husband will make it home safely just because he is a Black man in America. But at the same time, to be Black means that you are resilient, because there is nothing that we haven't overcome in the time that we've been in this country. And I know that we can do it. I know that we can. Yeah.
We got like 5 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
No, come right back. Come right back.